The announcement of new tariffs by the newly elected president marked a turning point in a long and tumultuous history of trade relations.
With the problem they were having to do with the tariffs, we had a very good conversation.
And the immediate response from Canada set off a chain reaction that would have far-reaching economic consequences. The decision to impose tariffs on various trade partners was presented as a means to protect domestic industries and to redress what was seen as long-standing trade imbalances. However, the move was not without controversy, as it signaled a dramatic shift in the established global economic order. The tariffs were introduced in a climate of heightened nationalism and economic protectionism, challenging the open trade policies that had characterized decades of cooperation between nations. The shock of these tariffs rippled across borders almost instantaneously, and Canada, a nation intricately linked with its southern neighbor through decades of interdependent economic relations, responded in a manner that few could have predicted. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Canada's retaliatory maneuver, a calculated and robust economic attack valued at $30 billion, was executed with precision and an underlying sense of urgency. The strategy behind the retaliation was multifaceted, combining legal trade measures with economic pressures aimed at destabilizing key sectors of the U.S. economy. This bold countermeasure was designed not merely as a symbolic gesture, but as a full-scale economic response that would inflict tangible damage on the economic framework of the United States. The Canadian government mobilized a complex network of regulatory agencies, trade bodies, and diplomatic channels to coordinate the response, ensuring that every aspect of the retaliation was meticulously planned and executed. The sheer scale of the attack underscored Canada's determination to defend its economic interests and to signal that unilateral trade actions would not go unanswered. In the days leading up to the event, economic experts and policymakers in both nations had expressed concerns about the potential ramifications of the tariffs. The interconnected nature of the North American economy meant that any disruption on one side of the border was likely to have a domino effect on the other. The tariffs were seen as a direct challenge to the established order of free trade, a principle that had underpinned decades of growth and prosperity for both countries. The introduction of these measures was expected to create immediate economic uncertainty, affecting not only industries, but also the financial markets and consumer confidence on a national scale. The anticipation of significant economic turbulence added a layer of anxiety to an already charged political environment. The Canadian response, with its staggering $30 billion figure, was a statement of both economic might and national resolve. The magnitude of the retaliation was such that it demanded the full attention of economic analysts and political commentators around the world. The strategic focus of the response was multifarious, targeting industries where the United States was most vulnerable. In sectors such as automotive manufacturing, energy, and agriculture, the economic ties between the two countries were so deep-rooted that even a temporary disruption could lead to cascading effects. The retaliatory measures included a combination of increased tariffs, regulatory barriers, and restrictions on the flow of capital, all of which were designed to exert maximum pressure on U.S. industries. This comprehensive approach was not simply about immediate gains. It was an effort to recalibrate the economic balance between the two nations and to force a reconsideration of trade practices that had long been taken for granted. The economic landscape in the United States was thrown into disarray as the effects of Canada's retaliation began to manifest. The sudden imposition of these economic barriers disrupted established supply chains, forcing businesses to rethink their strategies and to seek alternative sources for critical inputs. Manufacturing sectors, in particular, found themselves facing steep increases in production costs as the tariffs on imported goods and components began to erode profit margins. The automotive industry, which had enjoyed decades of smooth trade relations and integrated supply chains, was one of the first to feel the shock. Factories that had once relied on the free flow of components across borders were suddenly forced to operate in a fragmented market where costs soared and efficiency plummeted. The economic ripple effects were not confined to industry alone. They extended to the financial markets, where uncertainty led to increased volatility and a sharp decline in investor confidence. At the heart of the turmoil was the shift in consumer behavior precipitated by the economic shock. As prices began to rise due to higher tariffs and increased production costs, consumers found themselves facing a significant reduction in purchasing power. The surge in prices affected a wide range of products, from everyday household items to high-value goods, forcing a rapid reevaluation of consumer spending habits. The decline in demand for certain products, coupled with the uncertainty surrounding future economic policies, contributed to a contraction in domestic markets. This chain reaction not only impacted individual businesses, but also threatened the broader economic stability of the United States. The interconnectedness of modern economies meant that a downturn in consumer spending quickly translated into lower industrial production, reduced employment opportunities, and a general slowdown in economic activity. International markets also reacted strongly to the unfolding events. The imposition of tariffs and the subsequent Canadian retaliation sent shockwaves through global financial systems, triggering a re-examination of trade policies across numerous nations. Investors, who had grown accustomed to the predictability and stability of established trade relationships, were suddenly confronted with a new landscape marked by uncertainty and risk. The shift in sentiment was palpable, as markets around the world experienced heightened volatility and a surge in risk aversion. Emerging economies, which had previously benefited from the spillover effects of North American trade, found themselves grappling with reduced demand and disrupted investment flows. The broader implications of these events underscored the inherent risks of protectionist policies and the delicate balance required to maintain global economic stability. In Canada, the decision to launch a $30 billion economic attack was met with a mix of strategic calculation and national pride. The government and business leaders saw the retaliation as a necessary step to safeguard Canadian industries and to preserve the integrity of a long-standing economic partnership with the United States. The Canadian economy, while robust in many respects, was deeply integrated with its southern neighbor, and the new measures were designed to compel a renegotiation of trade terms that were viewed as inequitable. The response was carefully calibrated to send a message. Unilateral actions that disrupted the delicate equilibrium of North American trade would be met with swift and decisive consequences. The calculated nature of the response underscored a broader ideological commitment to the principles of fairness and mutual benefit, challenging the notion that economic strength could be wielded arbitrarily in the pursuit of national interests. The strategic implications of Canada's retaliation extended far beyond the immediate economic impacts. The event marked a significant moment in the ongoing debate over globalization and the future of international trade. On one side of the debate were those who championed free trade as the engine of growth and prosperity, arguing that open markets and integrated supply chains were essential for innovation and efficiency. On the other side were advocates for a more protectionist approach, who contended that domestic industries needed safeguarding from the vagaries of global competition. The events that unfolded in the wake of the tariff announcement brought these debates into sharp relief, forcing policymakers and economists to confront the realities of a rapidly changing economic landscape. The Canadian response was seen as a bold assertion of national sovereignty in the face of a global system that had, until that point, been defined by a delicate balance of interests and mutual dependencies. The dramatic escalation of tensions between the two nations also had profound implications for diplomatic relations. The economic measures, while ostensibly focused on trade, were imbued with a deeper political significance. They represented a fundamental challenge to the existing order and served as a stark reminder that economic policies were inextricably linked to national identity and political ideology. The confrontation was not merely about dollars and cents, it was a battle over the principles that underpinned modern governance and international relations. The unilateral imposition of tariffs and the subsequent retaliatory measures underscored the fragility of long-standing alliances and the volatility of global politics. In this new reality, economic strength was no longer an abstract concept confined to spreadsheets and balance sheets. It was a tangible force that could be mobilized in defense of national interests. The repercussions of the economic attack rippled through various sectors of the economy, leaving no facet untouched by the unfolding crisis. Financial institutions, already reeling from the initial shock, were forced to grapple with the implications of a rapidly contracting market. Banks and investment firms found themselves operating in an environment marked by uncertainty, where traditional models of risk assessment and asset management were rendered obsolete by the new economic realities. The erosion of investor confidence led to a tightening of credit, which in turn stifled the ability of businesses to secure the financing necessary for growth and expansion. This credit crunch, precipitated by the combined forces of increased tariffs and retaliatory measures, created a vicious cycle of economic decline that threatened to engulf entire sectors of the economy. The manufacturing sector, one of the pillars of the U.S. economy, bore the brunt of the disruption. Factories that had long benefited from the economies of scale inherent in cross-border supply chains found themselves facing insurmountable challenges. The increased costs associated with tariffs forced many companies to either raise prices or cut back on production, a choice that had immediate and profound implications for employment and economic stability. In industries such as automotive and electronics manufacturing, where precision and efficiency are paramount, even minor disruptions in the supply chain could lead to significant delays and financial losses. The resulting uncertainty created an environment of caution among manufacturers who were forced to adopt a defensive stance in the face of an unpredictable economic landscape. The agricultural sector, too, was not spared from the fallout. Farmers and agribusinesses, which had long relied on a stable framework of trade agreements to export their products, suddenly found themselves navigating a maze of new regulations and tariffs. The imposition of economic barriers disrupted established trade routes and forced many in the sector to seek new markets under conditions that were far less favorable. The cost of production increased dramatically as tariffs drove up the price of imported inputs such as fertilizers, machinery, and technology. These challenges were compounded by a climate of uncertainty that made long-term planning nearly impossible. The cumulative effect was a sharp decline in the competitiveness of U.S. agricultural exports, a development that threatened not only individual livelihoods, but also the broader economic health of the nation. Throughout the unfolding crisis, the theoretical underpinnings of international trade were thrown into sharp relief. The principles of comparative advantage, which had long justified the integration of global supply chains, were suddenly challenged by the realities of protectionist measures and unilateral economic aggression. The events served as a stark reminder that the benefits of globalization were not distributed evenly, and that the vulnerabilities of interconnected economies could be exploited when political will aligned with economic strategy. This confrontation brought into focus the delicate balance between national sovereignty and global interdependence, forcing policymakers to reassess the assumptions that had long guided economic theory and practice. The economic attack, by its very design, was an exercise in strategic calculus. Every measure implemented by Canada was intended to maximize the impact on the U.S. economy while minimizing the potential for reciprocal harm. The careful calibration of tariffs and regulatory barriers reflected a deep understanding of the underlying economic dynamics at play. The retaliatory strategy was not a blunt instrument, but a finely honed mechanism designed to create maximum disruption in targeted sectors. The precision of this approach was evident in the way it exploited existing vulnerabilities in the U.S. economic structure, particularly in industries that were heavily reliant on the seamless flow of goods and services across borders. The result was a series of cascading effects that, when taken together, delivered a severe blow to the overall economic stability of the United States. Underlying the complex interplay of trade policies and economic strategies was a broader ideological contest. The clash between protectionist impulses and the principles of free trade was not merely a matter of policy, but a reflection of deeper values and visions for the future of national identity. On one side, there was the belief that a nation must protect its industries and its workers at all costs, even if that meant sacrificing some of the efficiencies of a globalized economy. On the other side, there was a commitment to the ideals of free trade, which held that openness and cooperation were the best paths to long-term prosperity. The confrontation that ensued was as much a battle of ideas as it was an economic maneuver, and the implications of that clash reverberated far beyond the immediate financial losses. The repercussions of the economic attack were multifaceted, affecting not only the targeted industries but also the broader framework of international trade relations. The rapid escalation of tensions forced both policymakers and market participants to re-examine their assumptions about the stability of the global economic system. What had once been taken for granted as the natural order of free trade and open markets was suddenly called into question by a series of calculated moves that challenged the very foundations of economic cooperation. The event underscored the precarious nature of international economic relations in a world where political decisions could upend decades of established practices in a matter of days. The implications were profound, suggesting that the future of global trade might be marked by an ongoing cycle of action and reaction, with each move prompting a counter-move that could lead to further destabilization. The narrative of economic rivalry that unfolded during this period was one marked by a profound sense of urgency and inevitability. The decision by Canada to launch a $30 billion retaliation was not an isolated incident, but rather the culmination of years of simmering tensions and unresolved trade disputes. The unilateral imposition of tariffs by the United States had long been a source of contention, and the Canadian response was the final straw in a long series of economic skirmishes. The dramatic escalation of the conflict was a reminder that economic power, when wielded strategically, could serve as a formidable tool in the arsenal of national policy. It was an event that captured the imagination of policymakers, business leaders, and ordinary citizens alike, all of whom were forced to confront the reality that the global economy was no longer a realm of abstract theory, but a tangible arena where the stakes were nothing less than national prosperity and identity. As the economic shockwaves reverberated across the landscape of international trade, the focus on short-term economic metrics began to give way to deeper structural concerns about the future of economic policy. The interplay between trade, investment, and consumer confidence took on new dimensions, as the disruption forced businesses to re-examine long-standing strategies and to innovate in order to survive. The challenges that emerged were not confined to any single sector, but represented a fundamental shift in the way that economic success was measured and achieved. The intricate balance between domestic production and international trade was thrown into sharp relief, and the need for a more resilient and adaptive economic framework became increasingly evident. In the midst of this tumultuous environment, the event itself served as a powerful reminder of the risks inherent in a globalized world. The rapidity with which economic policies could shift, and the speed at which the consequences could be felt, underscored the vulnerability of even the most robust economies. The interconnected nature of modern trade meant that the repercussions of a single policy decision could ripple outwards, affecting every aspect of economic life. The attack orchestrated by Canada was a testament to the fact that in the realm of international economics, no nation could afford to remain isolated from the forces that shaped global markets. It was an event that highlighted the critical importance of diplomacy, strategic planning, and the need for a nuanced understanding of the delicate balance that underpinned modern economic relations. The comprehensive and meticulously executed retaliation was not simply a moment of economic reckoning, but a catalyst that forced a profound rethinking of the principles that had long governed international trade. The dramatic actions taken by Canada reverberated through the corridors of power in Washington, leaving policymakers scrambling to reassess their strategies and to understand the full implications of the new economic realities. The scope and scale of the attack served as a stark reminder that in the modern era, economic power could be mobilized in ways that had profound implications for national security, domestic prosperity, and global stability. The event was a watershed moment that challenged established conventions and forced a recalibration of the economic policies that had long been taken for granted. The unfolding crisis also had a significant impact on the cultural and social fabric of the nations involved. Economic policies that had once been seen as distant and abstract were suddenly thrust into the spotlight, as everyday citizens found themselves directly affected by changes in prices, employment, and overall economic well-being. The palpable sense of uncertainty and disruption permeated every level of society, from boardrooms and factories to households and community centers. The shift in economic policy was more than a mere political maneuver. It was a profound transformation of the social contract, one that redefined the relationship between the individual and the state in a world that was rapidly evolving. The implications of the event extended to the very core of how trade negotiations were conducted in the future. The aggressive stance taken by Canada set a new precedent, one that would influence the dynamics of trade discussions for years to come. The traditional framework of mutual concession and incremental compromise was upended by an approach that prioritized rapid, decisive action over prolonged negotiation. The strategic calculus of trade policy was fundamentally altered, with each nation now acutely aware of the potential for immediate and significant economic repercussions. This shift in mindset marked a departure from the days when trade disputes could be resolved through quiet diplomacy and behind-the-scenes negotiations. Instead, the new era was characterized by a willingness to engage in high-stakes economic warfare, where the costs and benefits of each action were measured in billions of dollars and the future of entire industries hung in the balance. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Canada's $30 billion retaliation? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.